Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Beyond Capacity, How Cities Are Using Third-Party Management to Deliver Results. This conversation, we're going to focus on how cities are navigating increasing pressure to deliver high-quality experiences while facing budget constraints, staffing challenges, and rising expectations from community and constituents. My name is Eric Sullivan. I'm a founding partner with the Sports Facilities Companies, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session. Just before we begin, I'm going to add a couple of quick housekeeping items. One, this session is going to be recorded, so we'll send out a recording to all of the attendees who are present today. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the discussion. The way that we do that is we have the Q&A chat. If you insert your question at any time into the chat, we'll keep log of that and we'll circle back and answer questions towards the end of the webinar. And then last but not least, if you have any technical issues while you're enjoying the webinar, just also drop a note in the Q&A chat and our technical team will support you. Now, let's set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. Across the country, cities, counties are being asked to do more with less, more programming, more economic impact generation, more community benefit. And when we think about the constraints that municipalities and local government are facing, oftentimes that's when third-party operations can really be a support and assistance to achieving the outcomes that that community is looking for. So we're going to talk today about third-party management and how local government can leverage experienced partners to achieve those outcomes. As we get started, we're joined by a great guest of panelists, leaders from operations here with the Sports Facilities Companies, with tourism, and also with city leadership. Bryan, I'll kick it over to you first to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bryan DeLatte, Deputy City Manager for the City of Portland, Texas. Portland's a town of about 25,000 on the Texas Gulf Coast. We're about halfway between Houston and the border with Mexico, again, right on the coast. We are the largest suburb in the Corpus Christi area. We're primarily a bedroom community. We focus on building community and raising families. That's actually in our tagline, what you see in the background here. So everything that we do as a city is about raising families. As a deputy city manager, I'm responsible for a variety of operational departments and capital assets, including what we're going to be talking about today, our sports complex, our municipal park, and our leisure and entertainment district, all of which are managed by third-party operators, and really excited for our discussion today. Thank you, Eric.
Excellent. Thank you, Bryan. Morgan, over to you for an introduction.
Hi, yeah, I'm Morgan Key. I am the Business Development Manager for Destination Bryan. So we are the destination marketing organization for the city of Bryan here in Bryan, Texas. And if you're not familiar with Bryan, we are right there in the middle of the Texas Triangle. Another landmark that you might be familiar with is right next door, we do have Texas A&M University. So our role really is promoting Bryan as a tourism destination, whether that is on leisure or my goal and focus is on that sales component. And we'll talk into it a little bit later, but we're not a part of the city. So that does open a lot more doors, but we'll talk on that in a little bit.
Excellent. And last but not least, Mike Kelly.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, Eric. Mike Kelly, I'm Executive Vice President with SFC. I oversee our operations for our complete corporate portfolio, which is just about 100 accounts across the country. I've been with SFC just coming on 4 years, and prior to coming to SFC, I was the General Superintendent and CEO of the Chicago Park District. And I worked in city government for just close to 30 years. And in addition to being the CEO, I was the COO, in-house counsel, and I did a slew of other operational things for both Chicago Park District and the City of Chicago in my career. So I'm very familiar with the public side of things, being the client, and these types of decisions you're facing where you're asked to do more with less. It seems like it's a constant drumbeat, right, in government. So I've walked in your shoes over the years.
Mike, I'm going to kick the first question over to you here just to get us started and kind of level set the conversation. When cities hear third-party management, what do you think some of the misunderstandings or some of the preconceived ideas maybe that are misled at the very start of the discussion?
So it's a really good question, and it's a good one to kick off with, right? So obviously every city's different, every region's different, but remarkably for me, a lot of cities across the country have never turned to private management. Certainly for me in Chicago, I had a zoo, I had golf courses, I had a 5,000 slip marina, I had Soldier Field. So you couldn't ask government to take all those on. We just didn't have the expertise. Uh, but in my travels with SFC, as I've gotten out and I've gotten to talk to countless amount of clients or potential clients, it's still foreign territory for a lot of people. This concept of privatization and what does that mean, and essentially the fear of losing control. And hopefully in this hour we can allay a lot of those fears and just explain to people that like you're still in control. You're still calling the shots. It's just bringing on expert management, someone who this is what they do for a living to manage whatever asset it is you have. So yeah, I hope we can, dispel some of that.
Absolutely. So, Bryan, I'm going to kick the next question your way. From the deputy city manager chair, when you were thinking about with Fifth and Elm, the entertainment district, and we were thinking about the sports and recreation complex, and the decision to bring in a third party manager, what were some of the internal questions that you and the team had to work through and really seriously consider before you made that decision?
That's a good question. It's a tough question right off the bat, and Mike hit it right on the head. It was kind of a foreign concept to us. We'd had a sports complex at Municipal Park, for 50 years, and we managed those kind of in an okay fashion. We weren't, really excellent at doing that, and a number of years ago, in 2017, we determined, we want to rehabilitate, reconstruct these facilities and turn them into world-class facilities in this part of the state. And we went and took what were fine grass, fields and transformed those into 11 artificial turf fields. And it really, really elevated Municipal Park and the sports complex. And we continued for a number of years managing those internally. And it became a struggle for us. And we had to come to the realization and really ask the question, what are we really good at as a city? And cities are generally good at public safety. They're good at building infrastructure. They're good at developing policy, and doing programs that improve the lives of our residents. But running competitive, revenue-driven sports venues or managing entertainment venues, it requires a different discipline. It requires a different education and different experience. And so that was really the first question that we had to ask ourselves: are we good at this? And yeah, we were okay, and we wanted to elevate it to the next level, and that got us to exploring third party management. Um, Really, the other big question that we had to ask ourselves: if we turn this over to a third party manager, as Mike alluded to, how do we continue calling the shots? That was extremely important to us. We wanted to ensure that our values that we uphold in our community are what a third party manager is going to uphold. So how do we align ourselves with those community goals that it's about our families first, it's about our local leagues first, it's about our residents visiting an entertainment venue first before it becomes sports tourism or large out of town tournaments or larger concerts in our entertainment venue that may displace our local residents.
That's really good, Bryan, and helpful insights. Morgan, similar question, but a little bit different perspective. You lead business development for Destination Bryan, with which is, a DMO, Destination Marketing Organization. You're a massive stakeholder in the Legends Event Center. Can you talk about some of the decision-making process that led the community to and support from your organization to bring in a third-party manager?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak entirely on behalf of the city of Bryan, as they were the ones who initially started those conversations and going to do the site visits at other facilities. I know they came over to Hoover and looked at that facility and decided, this is what we want to replicate. We want to have that in our city. And so I think when they made that decision of using a third party, it was very much in the same light of why they likely decided to have Destination Bryan created outside of the city. We are a new DMO that started about 5 years ago. And the reason for that is is helping expedite decision making, right? Being able to operate it as a business, and not having to worry about the politics and varying interests that comes with the municipality and the cities. And so, and another thing too is the capacity, right? Everyone, it's more is less. And so having the facility be outside of, let's say Parks and Rec, it expands that capacity, opens more doors. And so I think it was just kind of a no-brainer for the city to be able to say, okay, this is the route that we want to take and go that third party, because, we want to do business, we want to do business right, and we want to make it quick.
Excellent. We're going to come back to that. We're going to talk about how we partner and work together. But, Bryan, you touched on something, and Mike, you touched on something I want to go back to. Mike, I'm going to kick this over to you. Sometimes there's confusion between third-party management and privatization, right? And Bryan, you talked a little bit about goal alignment. Mike, can you maybe differentiate between what's third-party management look like and what's privatization? How do they differ?
Well, to me, uh, we certainly in my world of government, Chicago's a very union town. And so anything that wasn't being done in-house was considered privatization, and it was said as a bad word. And I'm pro-union. So this wasn't a comment on unions at all, but there was an educational piece to that. And so when you were, like Bryan said, hit the nail on the head, when you're trying to evaluate, look, what are we good at? What are we not good at? You start to evaluate, and clearly you'll find yourself, and I would imagine a lot of people that are participating in this now are either have already done it or they're wrestling with it, is how do I bring a third-party management company in to evaluate, assess, and possibly manage that facility for us? Again, that's a far cry from just privatization in the sense that, like, to some it may mean selling the asset, right? Some places in the country right now are wrestling with selling the asset. That is not what we're talking about traditionally. It's simply saying we're going to hire someone to manage this facility for us and hopefully drive revenue, drive participation, and reduce our costs, right? I mean, really, that's how it boils down to it. So I hope that answered the question, Sully. That's how I see the universe.
And you've got to
I think it does. And I think, Bryan, you touched on this in goal alignment. When it's third-party management, oftentimes the way I think about it is you're bringing someone in to help achieve your goals as a community. And so you're going to contract some of those guideposts, some of those thresholds around financial performance, about community inclusion, about economic impact. Versus if it's just privatization, that might mean where we just lease it out to a third party operator and they can run it however they want to, right? Without having that commitment to the community's goals. Bryan, were you going to layer something in there?
Yeah, and just to that point, every time that we've gone to third-party management, we've been very deliberate with it. We've been, really having in-depth discussions, in-depth conversations with third-party managers before we sign a contract. And these are our city's goals. Here are the goals of the community. Here's how we want these facilities to be operated. And if a third-party manager is not willing to operate the facility in that manner, you need to find a different third-party operator. That's a distinction between, what Mike was talking about between third-party operator and privatization. If it's privatization, they're going to go do whatever they want. It's almost as if you're selling off the asset. A third-party manager, they're just an extension of your staff. They're the extension of your staff that are the experts at this facility, whether it's a sports venue, whether it's an entertainment venue, a community center, an airport, whatever it may be. They're the experts. They've gone to school. They've got the experience doing that. But making sure those goals are aligned, not just before the contract is signed, but continuing to check in on a regular basis as that third-party manager is on board to ensure that they're continuing to meet those goals, those community goals, is critically important.
And as we think about those community goals, one of the things that we've had a lot of conversation around in the industry is this convergence of community recreation, parks and recreation, and sports tourism, right? And now more than ever, we're seeing assets that the goals or the definition of success includes metrics on both sides of the equation. We want to bring the local community out to play, but we also want to bring new spending to the market. Morgan, that's a huge part of the role that you play in Bryan. Can you talk about how you think Legends has benefited from a third-party operator, and how you, from the seat that you're in with Destination Bryan, how you've, partnered in that effort?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to give a little bit more background, my before Destination Bryan started, my background was in convention sales. That's what I did. I started in hotels, and then when I moved to this side, I was focused on convention sales. And then when Destination Bryan was created, the bread and butter was sports, youth sports. And then we knew with the city wanting to have this facility, I was our sales department. So I said, I'm going to learn sports tourism. And with the opportunity that, I'm going to use Legends Event Center and Jamie Cox as the general manager over there, that was a way for me to get just completely indulge in the sports tourism and find those opportunities. So then I could then align my skill set and assets in the sales and the DMO world, knowing what everyone's looking for, but then apply it to the sports tourism. And it was apparent from the beginning. It's going to our first trade show. I briefed Jamie Cox on what Destination Bryan was, what the city had to offer, and then how could we infuse that into what this facility is and what he was the subject matter expert on for the facility, and what SFC could do, not just from the management, but on that event management perspective. So we were able to go in and talk to these rights holders before the doors were even open. And we've already got that trust because that network has already been established, and they know the trust and the experience that they got from Hoover, for a tournament. And we're able to then replicate that and bring it, whether it's that same event and try a different destination, or it's starting and having the trust to create a whole new tournament or event within that same organization. So from the beginning, we saw the success that was going to come from Legends simply because of the experience that the third party management had.
So Morgan, let's stay on that thought for a second. So there's only so many of these shows where we have content, right? Essentially rights holders, tournaments, camps, clinics, events that are out there looking for inventory. They're looking for a place to have there. And there's the sports ETA, there's teams, there's Connect Marketplace, there's these different booking shows. So when Jamie Cox is there as the general manager and representing the venue, can you talk about the distinction between representing the venue versus the destination as a whole? What are you talking about to some of those groups that are looking to bring their event to Bryan?
Absolutely. I think it is, it's a no-brainer for if you have the facility and to pair your destination and take those meetings together. Because as the supplier for the community, I don't control dates, I don't control space, I don't control prices, right? So being able to take those appointments together, Jamie's got the space, right? He can tell you what that facility is capable of doing, how the flow of that will go, but then he doesn't need to be the subject matter expert when it comes to the hotels, to the transportation, to those other logistics that are just as important to a rights holder and to a tournament. And so that's where I can step in and talk about all of the logistics. What sort of financial incentives can we do? And, it could lead to book business at that show, right? It doesn't necessarily require a follow-up. So you're already gaining that trust and you're answering all those questions. And so that's what I've really shown to be the success. And I would encourage anyone to do. If you've got this facility, care and make sure that your facility and that staff has a general understanding of the community and the other assets, but they don't need to be the subject matter experts. Stay where they are on the facility and then work cohesively together on talking about your destination.
That's really great. So it's really about, working together to sell not only the venue or the complex, but the destination as a whole, and the things to do while you're there, and how to create a great, memorable experience for the team and family members alike. I love it.
Yeah, and I would also add to
Yeah.
that real quick is that, going to these trade shows, what sets you apart? Everyone has hotels, everyone
Mhm.
has a facility, right? And so you have to find a way to really set yourself apart, and you're able to accomplish that a lot quicker when you're just talking and you're answering the questions about the destination and what is unique to that destination, and then infuse that into the facilities conversation.
Right on, right on. I think that level of authenticity, right? Leaning into who you are and your
Mhm.
identity. People don't want to go have the same vanilla experience at every stop in the road. They want to experience, what does Portland have to offer? What does Bryan have to offer? What do other parts of the country have to offer? So I think that makes a lot of sense. Bryan, we've talked about a lot of the benefits. There's no public decisions, you know this in your seat as well as anyone. There's no public decisions that aren't met with some skepticism. When you made the decision to go from self-performed to bringing in third-party operators for sports and for entertainment, how did you maybe communicate that decision to some of the residents in Portland who were skeptical?
Yeah, that's a great question. And kind of using in the context of our Fifth and Elm project, that was kind of a revitalization of our old downtown area that become dilapidated. And the city bought an entire city block right in the middle of it and constructed a 2,500 person concert venue along with some indoor, outdoor rental spaces as a public park. There's a splash pad, playground, a variety of public spaces. And, as we, spoke earlier in this webinar, we had to ask ourselves this question, can we manage this efficiently and effectively? And the answer was probably not. We could manage it just okay, but not in an excellent manner. And so, we went out and sought out a third party manager for this venue. And there was some conversation in the community. They were concerned about loss of control over the city asset, and that concern is valid. But we were able to tell the community that the city still owns the asset. The city still sets the policy. We still approve the budget. It's that third party operator. They just manage the day-to-day performance of that facility. So we didn't sell the asset. We just hired the expertise. And in communicating that with the community, we used some analogies. Just like we hire architects and contractors to build buildings, we hire engineers to design bridges. We hire attorneys for specialized legal work. This is similar. We were bringing in specialized operational expertise that we didn't have at a city level, and the results have really spoken for themselves, and it's been fantastic. Because at the end of the day, our residents, it doesn't matter to them who operates it. All they care about is community access, quality programming, well-maintained facilities, and whether the facility is financially stable. And we've kind of taken a position. It's not our job to operate all of our facilities ourselves. It's our job to ensure that what's there is operated well.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. Mike, as we think about this, from, the self-performed to the third party manager, you've sat on both sides of the equation. So you've seen this firsthand, holistically. What do you think some of the systems or disciplines, when you think about, the tools, the technology and the people, what do you think some of the things that the professional operators that bring to the table that are most difficult for the cities or the counties to self-perform or to replicate internally?
So again, I don't want to overgeneralize, right? It's tough to say what everybody's doing. So some people may be doing it very well, but in my experience, both in Chicago and with SFC, technology is a big one. I'm old enough to remember when government was the last to get anything because of the perception of spending on your employee it was a no-no. So like just getting a computer or decent computers. So I find technology is usually behind building maintenance systems, are usually behind the work order system if they have one and how they're managing their work orders, if they even have the capability of fixing the problems that are breaking. Whether you have a new facility that's under warranty or you've got an aging facility, I find a lot of clients, they fix it as they break it, and it's not that they don't have a team in place to fix the plumbing or the roofing or whatever could happen to the facility. Certainly on the registration side, no one has cracked the code on the perfect registration, but that technology is moving very fast. Government rarely can keep up with that just because of procurement laws and what you need to do. So technology, apps, a lot of government agencies don't have any dedicated apps, especially to their sports facility. Marketing, marketing budgets are usually pretty thin and they're not dedicated to the asset. Those are some off the top of my head that I just think that government usually just struggles with across the board, not just for a sports facility, just those wants, not needs. Again, like Bryan said at the beginning, government's very good at safety and transportation, usually education, police, fire. After that, everything starts to dwindle down. And despite what happens is now we see this movement across the country where people are recognizing the power of sports facilities for the quality, not just for revenue, but in tourism, but for quality of life of the residents. And I could talk forever about that. But the reality is you build this facility and then you have to very quickly, do you have the pieces in place, both technology, the staffing? Do you have the wherewithal to manage it and manage it? You've essentially built this wonderful facility, and can you manage it on your own or not? And there's a lot that goes with it.
Mike, I'm going to drill into that last point that you made because it's a reality. Anytime that we're talking community events, recreation, entertainment, these are people-intensive operations. Can you just touch upon staffing and how maybe some of the compensation structure, some of the timing to onboard between the public sector and the private sector?
Yeah, gosh. So the labor side, right? Managing work is easy, managing people's hard, right? It's that is a whole nother layer to this. And I mean, I can look, I've been on both sides. I can say it. There was always a sigh of relief when we put a new facility out that we built out on the street and we got a bid and somebody awarded it. And there was a relief that we were like, okay, someone else has that now because
Yeah.
we've got 8,000 other things on our plate that we have to worry about. That includes hiring and tracking people down. And like in Chicago, we have residency laws. So if I'm searching for talent on a brand new facility, I'm required. Everyone has to live in Chicago. Think about that alone. Versus if I hire a third party company, they can draw from all over the country. Now with the remote workplace, even more so. We just know it. We have talent all over the country we can tap into. And actually, that's a very good point. You when you hire a third party company, you get all that peer leadership and all of that experience and exposure that company has across the country. So you get to learn best practices that are constantly developing, and you also get to tap into like facilities, like regions, like cultures, whatever's going on. If you were to bring it back to sports, no one's got their finger more on the pulse of a volleyball, tour than a sports facility management company, as opposed to the people in your office. It's just, it's there. I'm starting to drift here on your original question, so I hope I didn't get too far off of it. But no, I mean, there's just a level of expertise that you would expect. Like Bryan said, again, I'm picking on Bryan, but like you you hire lawyers. You hire lawyers based on their expertise. You don't hire a litigator to do a real estate transaction, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's no reason why government shouldn't hire the best, whether it's self-perform or third party, to get the job done.
One thing you did touch on there that I want to just underscore is it's not just these big year-round parks and indoor facilities that are operating, 365. When we think about some of the seasonal assets that are really important to the fabric of communities, right? I'm thinking about the pop-up winter markets and
Yep.
the seasonal ice rinks that go with that. When we're thinking about the Memorial Day to Labor Day and the seasonal aquatic centers. One thing that I know we've seen firsthand is all of a sudden in some municipalities, just to get people through the appropriate background checks and screening and whatnot, it can take 60 to 90 days. And in that amount of time, we can miss the season or
Right.
the season can be half over. And so even as we think about these seasonal operations where you have to ramp up really quickly and you don't want to do it in a way that costs you extra dollars, but the efficiency to be able to mobilize and hire quickly, I would think would rise to the top of that list as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you throwing in seasonality, you're just adding an extra layer of nimbleness that oftentimes the outside has that the government doesn't for whatever reason. I mean, again, I was as guilty as anybody. The seasons sneak up on you very quickly, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, "Holy cow! We're not even ready for summer camp, right?" And it's March. So yeah, I mean, seasonal aquatics and ice brings a whole nother level of unforeseen circumstances.
Absolutely. I'm going
Hey,
to
Eric.
keep rolling with questions here, but I want to remind everyone, please put your questions into chat. We've got some great questions coming into the Q&A board. We're going to continue to monitor those, and I assure you we are going to save time so that we can address as many of them as possible here when we get closer to the top of the hour.
I think Morgan had a point you want to
Yeah.
make too.
Oh, of course. Sorry,
Yeah.
Morgan.
Another point that I wanted to make that we've seen here in Bryan is I mentioned that we have Texas A&M here, right? So from a staffing perspective, sports management, there's, the College of Kinesiology, that Legends Event Center has been really great about bringing in those students, and they're getting that firsthand experience on running an event. And I have seen countless staff members from Legends go on to other facilities, right? And or going to other destinations. And so it's also really great for the community. And we have that university. And a lot of students don't have the luxury to go do an internship or go do a job that is applying a skill set that they're learning in another destination, whether it's financial burdens or that sort of thing. So being able to have that in our backyard and partner with the university has been really great to see. And we're really putting out qualified candidates into the workforce too.
I love that. I love that. And Morgan, I'm going to stay on that because what that is that's a proof point, right? That things are going well from the labor and the people development perspective. When you think about Legends and just, from the impact to the community on a tourism perspective, what were some of the things, the metrics, the signs that told you, this is working? Were you tracking, room nights, visitor feedback, stakeholders that came to the market, their responses? What are some of the things that you inquired about and looked at?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier, just from the get-go, going and to the trade shows and having people want to commit and turn things definite before the doors open. I mentioned that. But other things that I really saw firsthand and working alongside the team was, I had a wrestling group, for example, that was at our expo facility, and they were capped. They could not grow anymore, and they had the desire to. They had heard, when that there was going to be a new facility. They were really eager. And so I was able to make that introduction, and now they have moved that wrestling tournament from that expo, have been able to grow that tournament there at Legends.
Right.
And in addition to that, they've also now have a second event that they're doing. And so I think that's proof in the pudding, right? Seeing multiple events come from the same event organizer. And then too, our hotels, right? I try to host frequently I call it a sip and see. Everyone wants to have a drink, a cocktail, and talk about things, right? So I want to be the fun person and make that happen for everybody. But I bring together our hoteliers and the Legends staff, the Legends Event Center staff, and say, hey, see this space, and get to know what's on the books. What do we have? What's upcoming? Because also the hotels are just as part of this as too. Is if those teams that are coming in don't have a great experience with the hotels, that the facility can't control that product, right? They can't control the hotels. So again, I want everyone to be cohesive and they understand what the goal is. Here's the groups that we have, but then what's prospecting? What are we targeting? What do we want to go get? Volleyball wasn't something that was in market really for us. And now with Legends Event Center coming on board, we've been able to expand and have more volleyball, have more cornhole. And so the hotels are seeing that and they want a piece of that too. So they're saying, how can we still be as active and engage with the facility? It doesn't have to go through me. I don't have to be the gatekeeper of everything. I want to make sure that our hoteliers are talking to the facility as well. And we're booking and cooking real quick. There doesn't need to be a process that who's seeking credit, whatnot. It's just like, hey, let's go get the business. Let's make it happen. Let's make some money. And then the restaurants, I can say that we had, I think of one of our restaurants in particular that's right there by the facility. And he called up and he's like, why are there so many volleyball teams coming through? What is going on? And so that they're like, it was a huge weekend for us. And they they weren't mad about it. They're like, we want to know more. What's going on? How can we best prepare? And in response to that, there's actually a platform that the Legends Event Center team put me on. It's a calendar, and so I put together. They use it internally, but I put together this master calendar for our community. And I share it with all of our stakeholders. I share it with our hotel partners, anyone that's looking to plan something. What is that need date? Or maybe don't put something on the state because there's already a big tournament and it's going to drive a lot of demand and you're not going to be able to have the hotel rooms. And so it's, again, just putting all of that together in the pieces so we can make really smart business decisions. And so in addition to that, we've had groups that, the major shoe brands, right? We've had Adidas and Puma come through that have never been, maybe even never considered Bryan, right? As an option. And now we're able to do that. And we are the home to them. And we're now utilizing the Texas Event Trust Fund for some of these groups because they're so large. And so that's what, that's the proof in the pudding right there. It is, you're seeing the groups, they're coming, and we're having to now tap in and incorporate new resources that we haven't before to be accommodating for these groups.
Morgan, I'm going to put you on the spot. If we were to walk in and we were to ask one of these hoteliers or one of these restaurateurs in your community, what do you think about Legends? What are they going to say? What's their perspective on the impact it has the community?
Yeah, they keep those rooms full with all the kids, the sports tourism. And I think what they'll also say, they'll have opinions on the type of athletes that are coming through, with tourism economics and the destinations international, those calculators that you're using, each type of sport, and whether it's a boys or a girls team, those all have different values, right? A volleyball team or a girls basketball team are going to maybe be worth a little bit more than a boys team because the girls might their travel party is going to be larger compared to maybe a boys team where they're just coming with the team and the coach. And so it's an opportunity for me to educate on that, and make our community better, because I think someone mentioned it earlier. We're all extensions of each other's staff. And so we can find those good pieces of business and we're like, this is what really matters. When we have this volleyball tournament come in or this girls basketball tournament, this is what you're going to want to see. And then the hotels start clicking. They're like, man, this is more than just seeing our occupancy go up. We're going to start seeing our revenues go up. Our ADR is going to go up, and that's what they want to see. It's all about just what's going to make them happy and make their bosses happy. But everyone's been happy to see, and they're like, how do we get more? How do we get more rooms? How do we get more involved?
I love it. That's great. That's great. Bryan, I'm going to take it back. I want to take it back to the kind of municipal leader thought process. And as you first pursued third-party partnership with either the entertainment district or sports and recreation, what were some of the considerations that needed to be addressed, or what were some of the things that you really internally discussed and made sure permeated through the discussion, negotiation, and contracting of those third-party operators?
That's a good question. Earlier when I mentioned that in terms of the sports venues that we were doing a good job but not a great job, that has to do with my performance, not the performance of those out of the facility. Because as deputy city manager, city manager's office, city council, we're focused on 1,000 different things. Whether that's building roads or public safety, or where we're putting a new fire station. Our day-to-day expertise is not coming to bear on the sports venues. And the individuals that we had working at the sports venues were doing a fantastic job, but they weren't getting the support that they needed, from us. And so one of the biggest risks was, as we were, going through this, making sure that the third party operator had that experience, had the expertise. And Mike mentioned it earlier, rather than having 6 full-time individuals out there that, have kind of learned on the job here in Portland, now all of a sudden they had hundreds of people behind them from all over the country that have done the exact same thing that they're trying to do. And so any of the struggles that they may be having on a particular task, they know that there's somebody else within that third party management company that has faced those same issues somewhere else that has the answers to them. And so, it's those kinds of risks and being able to mitigate those just through the depth of experience and expertise of a third party manager was critically important to us. Really, the other big issue or the big risk we wanted to ensure was that our values became the third-party operators'
Mm.
values. And, again, these were community assets built for, in terms of the sports venues, built for our local leagues, for the entertainment venue, built for, our families, our community to go and hang out on a Tuesday afternoon. And so it's ensuring that the third party management company maintained those goals. And, we, in the contracts, some of the incentives are geared towards that. A third party manager is going to focus on the financial side of it. And if your compensation structure is aligned with your goals as a municipal organization, the third party manager is going to align themselves with those same goals. And so that was critically important to us.
Bryan, I put Morgan on the spot, so it's only fair I put you on the spot as well.
Do it.
The things that I heard, you talked about values, you talked about accountability, essentially. That's why I distill it down to accountability to those values or the outcomes that you want to commit. How do you ensure that train stays on the track? Like, how are you communicating? Does it happen once a year, once a month, once a week? Is it ongoing? How do you communicate with your third-party operators?
It is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. We've got for our sports venues, we've got check-ins every 2 weeks where it's a 30-minute, 60-minute meeting. How's everything going? Is there anything that you need from the city? Is there anything the third-party operator needs from us? Our entertainment venue is newer, so we do that once a week. Third-party operators is not a sit in and forget it. You don't
Yeah.
sign a contract and then just forget about it. And Morgan's talked about that, significantly. You've got to continue working it. You're not doing this so you don't have to think about that asset, that facility ever again. It takes work. It takes intentional communications in order to keep that train on tracks.
No, that's fantastic. And when you talk about that communication, it's fair to say it almost sounds like that team becomes an extension of your team, right? As contract administrator, you're leading and you're holding accountability with that team, just as you would a staff member that was on payroll internally.
Absolutely. It's they are a staff extension because if to the average citizen that goes out to these venues, they don't see the distinction. They don't if something goes wrong, they're not going to just blow it off. Oh, you don't work for the city. You're just a third party operator. I'm going to give you a pass. No,
Mhm.
any mistake, any issue would immediately come up to us, go up to the city council, and so they're treated as if they're staff, both good and bad.
Yeah.
So just one more extension onto that, Bryan. I've had a peek at some of the questions coming in. There's a couple that have a similar undertone to them. So before we formally go to Q&A, you've successfully done this a couple times. What did that process look like? How did you find a third party operator?
That's a great question. For both of those processes, we put together a request for qualifications, and went through a formal process. And it wasn't on the financial side, it was on the goal side, on the vision side, to ensure that these third-party managers align with our vision. And once that happened, then we negotiated on the financial side. We'll speak about Fifth and Elm, that concert venue. This was a brand new facility, and we knew that as a city, we had no expertise whatsoever in managing a concert venue, managing an indoor, outdoor gathering space. And so we put together an RFQ, and then we sent that out to others throughout the country, that operate similar facilities. And, luckily, we got a response back from a venue operator that wasn't too far away from Portland. And it was kind of a marriage, it was a perfect match. Their vision aligned with our vision. And once you've got those visions aligned, then you can negotiate a contract because otherwise, if you're not rowing in the same direction, it's going to be a struggle putting the contract together.
That's really good. That's really good perspective, Bryan. All right. So before we turn over to Q&A here, I'm going to just give a general broad question to each of you. I'm going to give you some airspace. Morgan, I'll let you lead off here. if someone were in your shoes in another community, and so they're thinking about this from the CVB, DMO, Sports Commission perspective, and they're going down this process for the first time, what are some words of wisdom or some thoughts that you might share them at the beginning stages of evaluating a third party operator?
Yeah, I think Brian, I took some notes while you were talking, and it is that goals and the vision, and um, do they align, and making sure that whoever you decide to work with, they understand who you are and who you aren't in a
Mm.
destination. Taking the time to say, this is what we are, this is what we've heard our community ask for. These are things that we know rights holders have asked for that we just don't currently have, but maybe this is something that this facility could. And just making sure that you're aligned in everything that you're doing from the get-go. Get to know each other, get to know who those contacts are that they have and the strengths, and how can you offset some of those strengths. I don't like to use the word weakness, but if there's a weakness, how can we support each other and amplify and make sure that we're all moving towards the same way. So I think you hit it on the head right there, Brian, was making sure that the goals and vision and who we are and who we aren't as we continue to build out that pipeline too.
Awesome. Bryan, someone that's in city leadership, county leadership, local government leadership, they're thinking about the same question. What are some words of advice, experience that you would give up here?
I guess first, and we touched on this earlier, kind of be honest about your internal ability and your internal capacity. Don't be prideful about it. I mean, I've spoken openly. It's like I wasn't able to provide the support to our sports venues that I would have liked to. I have no experience, doing concession stands. I have no experience, handling artificial turf. On the concert venue side, I have no experience, with sound systems or lighting systems. So let's go find somebody that is an expert at that. There's nothing wrong, in admitting that, and it's a strength, not a weakness. And we've talked about it. This is again not a set it and forget it venture. You've got to continue to work it. Managing a third party operator is much like managing an employee, but just in a different way. Just a staff extension. And then kind of threads that we've all talked about. You got to communicate. You got to do it early. You got to do it often. You got to, over communicate so that when things don't go well, you know how to handle them.
Nice. Mike, I'll let you back clean up. Bring out your formal legal background, closing statements, closing arguments. Any thoughts about just everything we've discussed today, and any advice that you'd give someone that's considering, third party operations before we go to Q&A?
Yeah, I think the last piece is, and it's been touched on, I would just stress again, if you're thinking about it, take a good, not only a hard look, can you do it or not do it, but like Brian said earlier, your values, like really understand why you're doing it and what you're doing it. I both on the government side and on the private side, I have sat in rooms where you were talking about going a route of third party management, but not everybody was even on the same page of what they wanted. What was it supposed to be? Um, this question may or may not come up later, but people always ask me, what does success look like? Like when you're
Mhm.
coming in, look, I know it's not always easy. Again, I come from Chicago. It was never easy, but when you have your city manager and your mayor, your council, and your CVB or your DMO all on the same page, that is like harmony. Like when they're all singing, when you're building these things in a mixed council, or I mean, there's always going to be NIMBYs. There's always going to be someone who says, "Don't do this, don't do that," right? Or great, you had 500 volleyball teams, but boy, the traffic's bad, right? You're always going to have that. But when you can get the majority of your leadership all on the same page, supporting the project, that's huge. And then knowing what you want to get out of it. And we can help, or anybody can help on the third party side, help you craft that. But you do have to know what your goals are up front to some extent.
Right on, right on. Well, let's turn over to some questions from the audience. I'm going to take them here just in some of the order that they came in. One of the questions that came in was how can private developers support cities and counties with these goals? How can third-party real estate developers help to deliver quality sports assets? Anyone want to take a shot at that on the P3 front?
I I don't want to hog the airtime. So, but if you want, yeah, I mean, look, in my career, I did $1.5 billion in capital construction, and I would say two-thirds of that was privately raised or raised outside of what we had. P3, P3 means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Somebody said to me once, if you've seen a P3, you've seen one P3. This, but the reality is, it can help. I mean, you're getting to a point now where if you're trying to make improvements to a community, whatever it is, let's say it's a fire station, you're trying to make improvements to a community, you've got to think about, okay, we've got a limited amount of resources. We may have contaminated land or unused land. We've got all kinds of constituencies. How do we get that done? And to me, if you're relentless, and certainly for anybody on this call who's in the park and rec business, or on the sports and leisure side, you have to be relentless. That phrase was actually coined by a professor at Texas A&M, because you're at the bottom of the food chain on the resources. Parks poll at 98% approvals in almost every community. But when it comes to funding, parks and libraries are always at the bottom of the food chain. So if P3s and outside developers can get you to move the needle to get the project done, you have to consider it. You have to.
Yeah, and I'll say this, there's probably a whole nother webinar here in just the P3 spectrum, because to your point, so it's a delivery mechanism and it's a vast and how it can come together. Right. But I would say that just to put a bow on this and lead into a next question, we are seeing more communities that are interested in how do we look at a new development and a holistic approach. And so that's planning, finance, development, operations, and management. And I'll say we have seen more interest from cities and counties across the country taking that more holistic approach when it comes to redeveloping existing assets or bringing new assets out of the ground. All right. How does someone find or recruit these third-party operators? I think, Bryan, you touched on that with the RFQ. Anything else come to mind from anyone else on that topic on how to find or recruit these different groups?
I think it's you've got to research.
Yep.
You've got to, there's no one size fits all on these. Just like the P3s. Very few third-party management contracts are the same. And you've got to find other facilities that are like yours or like the one that you want to construct, and see how it's managed and see what its goals are, and are they aligned with yours, and that can give you a good insight as what's available in the marketplace.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I would add, if you can, give yourself enough time. Don't do a 30-day turnaround. I mean, give yourself as much time as you possibly can so the market can find you as well.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we were, deliberate about, entering any of these contracts. On the sports venues, that was about a 6 to 9 month process.
Yeah.
On the entertainment venue, that was over a year, because we wanted to make sure we did it right. It's not anything to rush into.
One question that came in was a community has a small event center, less than 20,000 square feet. They've got some pavilions and they've got some baseball fields. What is too small to consider? Any thoughts on, what does a facility need to be in terms of size and infrastructure to consider third-party operations?
Is that me?
Sounds like that maybe you, Mike.
Yeah. All right, I'll take it.
You're the catch-all, Mike.
I think the long and short of it, it's not so much if it's too big or too small. It's what do you want to get out of it, and what are you spending on it? I mean, if it's important to you and it sits in the town square, it could be very important to you, no matter how big or small it is. There were several parks in Chicago that I had just built that I privately managed because of the nuances of the landscaping, quite frankly, and the warranties that came with the landscaping. These weren't money-making parks by any means. These weren't massively like the hundreds of acre parks. They were just very strategically located in parts that we spent a lot of money on, that had an expertise just on the horticulture alone, that I was like, you know what, we need to get somebody else in here who knows how to do it, at least during the warranty period, which would be in some cases 3 to 5 years. That's just one example. So no, Again, I think if you're contemplate what you're spending on it, contemplating what you want to get out of it and the revenue, if anything, and then what it means to the quality of life of your community. And let that be your judge if you think you need third-party help.
I think that's really well said, Mike. And I think some of that you acknowledged, it's the sophistication of the asset as well. You mentioned if it's, something in the town square and it might be small but impactful. When we think about, seasonal skating opportunities right next to Wrigley Field, when we think about, aquatic centers that are only open for a period of time but literally welcome almost everyone in the community through those doors, they don't have to be big footprints to be tremendously impactful in how they, take up resources, both in financial and in personnel. So that's a really good thought. Bryan, a question specifically came in for you, and it said that Bryan talked about accountability in controlling budgets as part of the requirement for, working with your third-party operators. What does that look like, for the third party? How do you create your budgets? What's that process look like, and how do you hold accountability?
Sure, that's a great question. And, it's certainly a collaborative process. At the beginning of the budget year, as we're, going through our city budgets, every summer, we'll go through the budgets for sports venues and for our Fifth and Elm concert venue. And, it would be a frank conversation with the third party managers, like what we need to do to be successful. What is it going to take what budget is required in order to do that? And there is some back and forth. Then ultimately, though, the city council approves that budget. And then it is a third party manager responsibility to adhere to that budget. And, we treat that budget just like we would a police department budget or a parks and recreation department budget. That's their budget, and they need to adhere to it.
Right on. Thank you. Morgan, one I'm gonna direct your way. I think it has a lot to do with the operational setup, but really the marketing promotion. And the question is, how soon before doors open on a new facility do you want to bring in a third-party operator, or how soon do you want to start marketing and promoting that venue to the market?
I mean, I think as long as we know it's coming and it's happening, it's not too soon to start. It's as a salesperson, it's like start building that excitement. Start doing the renderings and talking about it, and then you can start doing the hard hat tours, bringing those people in. So I don't think it's ever, as long as it's coming and it's happening, start promoting it and start selling it. You got to build that excitement, not only with rights holders and prospective clients, but also your community too. Show what opportunities what is the impact of quality of life because of this facility. When we bring in this, we have the capabilities to host this large basketball tournament, and we can do it. We've already started those conversations. What's the story that you can tell from that pre-event? And then make sure you're doing it on the post-event side. Here's what the economic impact was. Here's how much money that this group in this event brought into our community. We've talked about that throughout this call. And so again, I don't think it's ever too soon. As long as you know it's coming, start building that excitement. And then just
right on.
adjust the narrative as you move along.
And let me jump in too on that. I mean, Morgan really hit the nail right on the head. It's like for our Fifth and Elm concert venue, we brought in the third party operator during design, and they helped us make design decisions.
Yep.
They're the experts at how a venue needs to operate. They're a venue in the technical aspects of it, the people aspects of it. And so having them on board during the design process really made some good decisions that we wouldn't have been able to make on our own. And so the earlier the better.
Bryan, that's really well said. When you think about front of house, back of house, and how an operationally really sound plan comes to market, a lot of value there. And then Morgan, I like what you touched on from really thinking about the cycle of business development, and you start with that interest and awareness campaign. That might start right when the shovel goes in the ground, right? And you get that really good groundbreaking excitement. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're booking events on the day that you expect the construction to be finished. Everyone knows construction projects evolve over time with what Mother Nature throws at us and the supply chain and just construction variability in general. And so I think as you build that interest and awareness, giving yourself some grace on a soft opening plan and some events that aren't, mission critical to your year one success is a great launch pad. And then when you get to the point where with some good certainty that your walls are up, you're working on your FF&E and your interiors and your commitments, then you can start to make some calendar commitments so that we're sure to set a date that we can achieve and we can hit and welcome the community in through our doors.
Yeah, I think another good opportunity for that too is, but maybe they aren't mission critical, but how can then you invite some of those local clubs or the other regional, let them kind of be your soft tournaments, that soft opening, get the, work out some of those opening kinks and things that, so that way, one, it's a great buy-in and get that excitement within the community, and these other organizations, whether it's local homeschooling association, let them go into that facility, let them use it, and it could lead to a more business opportunity, which I will say has happened here in Bryan, right? It's filling the calendar during the week, and then it's led to tournaments. So it's all about that cycle and just pre-planning and inviting people in. Use the product, experience it in any phase that you are.
Well said. Well said. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us. Morgan, thank you. Mike, thank you as always. This has been a great topic, a great session. If you have more questions, feel free, still put them in the chat. Any questions we didn't get to, we will reach out to and we will answer via email, as well as we will make this recording available to anyone that you'd want to share it with. Thank you very much for joining us, and learn more at SFC, sportsfacilitiescompanies.com. Thank you.